Hello. Let's talk about art school. Now, I know that this is a very great debate. I see a lot of artists on YouTube and wherever else basically saying you don't need art school. And while I agree with that, I did go to art school and I had a very positive experience. So I kind of wanted to share that with you all today and talk about some of the pros and cons that I experienced with art school. My name's Haley. I am a traditional and digital artist, among other creative things. So let's just jump right into it. First of all, I know that art school is not an option for everybody for financial and location reasons. It might not even be an option for you. And so that is totally okay. I was very, very blessed and privileged to get to go to a school and get some financial aid and some scholarships that helped me to go. Now, here's the thing, is that you can become an amazing self-educated artist. You can have an incredible career. I am not saying anybody needs art school, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about what I learned and why it was a positive experience for me. So here's the thing, is that I didn't even go to art school for college. I guess when people say art school, I think of college. I didn't go to art school for college. I went to film school for college, which film is what I consider my day job. I'm a filmmaker by day, artist by night. So rather than college, I went to a private art school for middle school and high school. And so I actually had 7 years of art training at this private school. Now, what was really cool is that from the time I was 11 years old, I had a major and a minor. And so going in, I was a art major and a music minor, funny enough. While I was there, my first year of art school, I quickly learned that I was not a musician. It did not come naturally to me. Every practice session just felt boring and like it was a burden, and I would rather be doing anything else in this world. And so after a year of being a music minor, I dropped the guitar and I actually tried theater for the first time that year. I auditioned for my first play, and that's where I discovered storytelling and acting, and theater led to film, and that changed my entire life. So first lesson from art school is that it is a very safe place to experiment. At least my school was. And I'm going to get into like the details of my school here in a minute, but you could try different majors, you could try different things, and it was a very safe place where you could fail and be like, okay, not for me, walk away, try something else. That, I think, was the beautiful thing about an art school that not necessarily everybody gets. I mean, you can obviously pursue different passions just in your own personal life and drop them and move on to something else. I do it all the time. But yeah, school is just like a cool structured way to, take a dance class and figure out if you like that, and take a creative writing class and all of that. Now, one of the things that I really enjoyed about art school was that it gave me a structured time of day where I was doing art for this period of time. Now, I know some people don't work super well with schedules, but for me, I thrive in a schedule. I love waking up in the morning, knowing what I'm doing that day, knowing what I need to accomplish, what my to-dos are, where I'm going to be when. And so for me to have 90 minutes a day, sometimes I had 2 art classes, which meant, 3 hours a day where I was doing art, was really beneficial because it gave me that structure where I didn't need to be doing anything else. This was my class. I didn't have chores to be doing. I didn't have jobs to be doing. Like, this was the time where I got to practice my art. And so ultimately art became a daily habit, which was just like reinforcing my creativity and helping me learn technique. And I think that honestly was one of the biggest pros of art school, because if you don't go to art school and you just have your normal daily life, it can be so easy to lose track of doing art. You've got chores, you've got bills to pay, you've got work, you might have kids and a family, all these responsibilities. It can be really hard to prioritize art. And so to have 7 years where I had this time set aside where that's what I was doing and that's how I was practicing, was a game changer for me, because I don't think that art was necessarily just like a God-given talent. It was a structured technical skill that I harnessed over those many years of practicing every single day and just grinding on what I wanted to do. Next, art school taught me how to learn art. And I know that sounds really funny, but if you don't know how to learn art, You might not necessarily know what you need to be practicing, if that makes sense. One of the things that we did for a very long time, I mean like the first 3 years that I was in art school, were master studies, where you basically recreate somebody else's work of art. And, you know, people get like all up in arms about that because they think you're like copying or whatever. You're not claiming that that was your art. When a musician is learning an instrument, right, like they learn chords and they learn scales and then they learn how to play other people's music before they learn how to make their own. And nobody thinks that's weird. But when an artist recreates somebody else's art, they're like, it's plagiarism. As long as you're not claiming that it's your art, as long as you're saying you're doing it for education, it is so beneficial to recreate other people's art with all different kinds of mediums, drawings, paintings, different styles from different periods of time. That way you can really kind of figure out like what styles you like and what styles you want to pursue and what you want to practice and where you feel like you are expressing yourself the most. And honestly, it's really good just to get that foundation of painting minimalism, painting realism, flowers, trying illustration, just dabbling in all these different things without the pressure of having to create it yourself. You're not having to come up with what it is that you are drawing or creating or what you're trying to say. You know, we weren't even worried about like self-expression at this point. It was just getting the foundation of how can you create something with your hands, tangible with your hands, you know. Then of course, you know, we moved on to still lifes and doing still lifes in the classroom with objects, a bowl of fruit, a vase of flowers, to still lifes with people and, you know, drawing someone sitting in a chair and fabric and how light hits them differently, to we would go outside and, you know, draw things out in the real world, draw buildings, draw light posts and trees and all of that. And then doing all of these different assignments really kind of taught me how to learn art. And so now as I'm self-teaching illustration, obviously I have the foundation of art, but illustration and digital art is like this whole other world. And so now I know that I can go do a master study and I can recreate somebody else's work of art. I can do a still life in an illustration style. I can go out and draw a tree at the park in an illustration style and really try and harness that style. And so yeah, it kind of just gave me this foundation of like, here is how you can practice art to get better at it. Now, the other thing with that is that we got to experiment with all kinds of different mediums. And so again, you get to experiment until you find what it is that really suits you. So we did everything. We did watercolors, acrylics, oil painting, collage. We did very little sculpture. I wish we had had more sculpture, but I think we just didn't have a sculpture teacher. I did graphic design, photography, I mean, everything visual art, like we gave it a try. This was amazing because I think just not everybody gets that. That's like a huge investment a lot of the time, but like we had to invest in our own art materials for sure, but we didn't necessarily have to buy all oil paints from scratch. There were oil paints at the school we could use. There were watercolors at the school we could use. Materials that we used a lot, like I had all my own acrylics because acrylic kind of became my medium. Pencils, charcoal, paper, sketchbooks, all of that I provided, but like there were a lot of mediums provided through the school. And honestly, I think it was just my teacher who brought his own materials to school to let us use. That was a huge benefit because I loved oil painting, but I don't think it was really for me. I hated watercolor, and so I didn't have to invest in all this watercolor stuff in order to find out that I didn't like watercolor. Next, this is one of the more controversial aspects of art school and just art in general, which is we learned about constructive criticism and feedback. And I think this is a really beneficial thing. And this is what a lot of people don't like about art school, right? Is like a teacher's opinion can just be, oh, I don't like your work of art, and so you get an F or whatever. I don't know. I don't really have experience with that. I feel like my teachers were super fair in their grading. It was never really about opinions as much as it was like, did you accomplish what you were trying to learn? Did you learn the new skill? I mean, at the end of the day, if you're trying to draw a hand and it doesn't look like a hand, like that's not as subjective as like personal style, self-expression, abstract art, all of that. It was more, did you accomplish what you set out to accomplish? However, as we got older and we got more into, technique and finding styles and creating self-expressive art, not just recreating other art and that kind of thing, we did do some art criticism where we would go around the room and talk about each other's art and give each other constructive feedback. And this was really positive in two ways. One, obviously you just learned. You saw through other people's eyes when they were like, hey, this really stands out to me. Do you want that to be the focus of the piece because it's really bright and distracting from, say, this subject matter over here? Or, I see a lot of blue tones in your reference photo, but I don't see any blue tones in your art. That kind of thing can just be really beneficial to hear from an outside perspective than from your own. We were really discouraged from ever saying we like something, we dislike something, or stating opinions. It was all about observations and things that we could improve upon in our art. And so that kind of took the subjective aspect away from it. It wasn't, I like your painting. It was actual, very literal, like your pen work is a little messy over here, or your stippling is beautiful and really detailed, or it could use more detail, or it was that kind of thing. I go through this with film all the time. The first thing I do when I finish a script is send it out to trusted people to give me notes and feedback so that I can get their eyes on it and get the feedback that I'm not necessarily seeing because I'm this close to the project, quite literally. No matter who you are and what kind of art you do, you are going to face criticism. We all live in this world with social media and all of the things, and we know that there are trolls and there are haters and there are people that are just gonna spout their opinions at you for no reason. And I think that this gave me a very good foundation to accept that there would be criticism out there and move on. Take what I wanted out of it, positive criticism, and also walk away from things that I don't really care to listen to. If you don't like my art, that's okay. Maybe it's not for you. Somebody else does. But it's really beneficial. If you grow up in a really pushy environment where it's just your mom being like, honey, that's the most beautiful painting I've ever seen all the time, and then you become an adult and are trying to pursue this as a career and you start facing criticism for the first time, I think it'll probably crush you a lot faster or make you want to quit a lot faster than if you grew up being able to accept criticism, accept feedback, and learn from it. Can give you feedback in a constructive way, who loves you and want what's best for you, but isn't going to be blinded by that love to just say, oh my God, it's beautiful and it's amazing, and never actually give you any sort of constructive feedback. I think that being honest, constructive, and giving to someone is a very true form of love, whereas flattery is actually not necessarily a form of love, because it just makes you look good, right? If you're just like, oh, great job, that just makes you feel good and the other person feel good, and it's not actually truly loving them in helping them grow. A great example of this, my family used to watch American Idol, and you always watch the auditions, and I think a lot of this gets dramatized and some of it's made up and whatever, but when there are those really, really bad auditions, just embarrassing for everybody involved, I remember my mom always used to say, who in their life doesn't love them enough to tell them that this isn't for them, or that they need to get vocal lessons, or, to get them a coach? Because how much more embarrassing is it for someone to think they're amazing at it because that's all they've heard their whole life, and then go on this national stage in front of the whole world to see as they embarrass themselves and sing a horrible and painful song? And I think my mom is right in that. To truly love someone would be like, I see your passion for singing and I think you need help here. You're pitchy here, I think you could use a coach. Here's this really cool music school that I've heard of. That's way more proactive and That's way more productive than just being like, oh, that was great, because you don't want the discomfort of telling them that it's not that great. Seeking feedback from people. If you don't have anyone in your life that you trust, there are plenty of art groups on Facebook that you can go on to and seek feedback. You could start your own. You could start an art club if you have art friends, whatever. I just think that getting constructive feedback from people is a really, really positive thing, and really good for your growth as an artist. Moving on. From what I understand from a lot of videos where people say they quit art school or they didn't go for X, Y, and Z, a lot of what I'm hearing are pretty negative experiences. There are a few reasons why I think my school was such a positive experience. One, it was a super small school. Every class had about 5 to 10 students in it, and so that meant you were really hands-on with your teacher. Your teacher knew you individually. They could kind of individualize the curriculum for you. I often finished art a lot faster than my classmates, just I think out of passion and excitement, and so my teacher could, add new assignments for me or change assignments, and everybody kind of got to learn at their own pace, and that was a really beautiful and cool thing that I know a lot of schools can't afford to do because they have so many students. If they're teaching 50 students all at the same time, you don't get that one-on-one experience, you don't get an individualized curriculum, and it just feels a lot more hands-off. We also just had exceptional teachers who truly, truly cared about their students. They wanted nothing but success for their students and would do anything to help us on our way as we learned. And so sometimes this meant tutoring us after school. Sometimes this meant, like I said, my art teacher, I'm pretty sure, just brought in all his own personal supplies so that we could have access to watercolors and gouache and oil paints and things that are a little bit more expensive to buy as a student or, as a family. He would just kind of provide those things for us, which was amazing. And I don't think a lot of other art schools would do that kind of thing. And then, like I said, we spent a lot of time out of our day very hands-on creating. And I know that there's a lot of curriculum out there that is more study-based. It's more like, let's learn the history of art and this time period and that time period. And we had some of that. We had some art history and that kind of thing, but it wasn't the majority. The majority of the education was doing, and I've always thought that is a much better approach than sitting in a class hearing a lecture for hours and hours. If you're into that, cool, no shame. For me, doing is so much better. I always say the same thing about the film school I went to. Same thing, tiny film school. From freshman year, they put a camera in your hand and you were on the field learning how to make films. And to me, that's just way better than 3 years of sitting, critiquing films, learning film criticism, learning how lighting works in a presentation. I need to set up those lights and I need to figure out how the light actually changes. And anyway, so we did a lot of art. We had a lot of assignments, and we were able to do a majority of it in class rather than having to take it home and have that be an extra thing that you have to do. I've heard of some classes where you do the lecture in class and then you have to do the assignment at home, and so that's just another thing on your plate. Being able to have those 90 minutes in class to do the art was just really, really beneficial. So all in all, I think I had a very exceptional experience. I wish more art school could be like my school, because I totally understand why a lot of people don't have that experience or aren't interested in that experience. So in conclusion, is art school necessary? No. I do not think so, but I think it can be beneficial. If you are a self-motivated, very disciplined person and you are able to prioritize art in a hectic life of paying bills and doing all these other things, then I think anybody can be self-taught and learn as long as they take the time to practice. Oftentimes in the creative world, I think a lot of time these skills get dumbed down to just God-given gifts. You just were born with the ability to do art. You were probably born with the inclination to do art, with the affinity to do art, but not necessarily with the skill. It's hours and hours, day after day of practicing and putting time into it that is going to harness that skill into something amazing. ultimately, if you are going to be self-taught, that would just be my advice, is make sure you're putting as much time into it as possible, because otherwise I think it would be really hard to grow and achieve what you want to achieve. I would encourage anybody to seek constructive feedback from the right resources. The main takeaway from this whole thing, whether you go to art school or you don't, is just do the work. Just do as much art as possible, as often as possible, and I think you're gonna grow and you're gonna learn and you're gonna become a beautiful artist no matter what. It is just not letting that passion get buried under all the other things about life. If you went to art school and you had a positive or a negative experience, tell me about it down in the comments. And also, if you're a self-taught artist, maybe send over some resources. If you've taken online classes or YouTube videos or anything like that, honestly, I could definitely use some help with Procreate right now, so throw some links down in those comments for me. I hope you found this video helpful, or at least relaxing to listen to, and I also hope that you have a beautiful day. So thank you so much for being here. Again, my name is Haley, and you can just go ahead and hit that like button and that subscribe button if you want to, and we can have some more chats like this in the future. This coffee is so cold by now. I've been talking for such a long time. It is a beautiful day out, so I'm gonna go get some sunshine. Bye bye.